He had $42 million in the bank. But on this particular Sunday afternoon, Fred Morgan drove to the poorest street he had ever known, and he brought the woman he loved with him. Not to impress her. Not to show her how far he had come. He brought her there to break her. Or at least, to see if she would break. Because Fred had a secret that his tailored suits and penthouse views couldn't erase. He had been burned before. Badly. By women who said I love you but meant I love this. Women who saw the account balance before they saw the man. And he had promised himself never again. So he had a test. A quiet, private, ruthless little test. He was going to take Naya Paige, the woman who made him laugh without trying, the woman his own mother adored, the woman he had been carrying a ring for in his coat pocket for 3 weeks. He was going to take her back to 14 Larkin Street. Back to the cracked porch. The peeling paint. The house that leaned like it was tired of standing. The neighborhood where he grew up counting pennies and wearing shoes with holes in them. He wanted to see what her face would do. He wanted to see if she would flinch. Look uncomfortable. Reach for her phone to escape the silence. Maybe say something polished and hollow like, "Oh wow, look how far you've come." He had it all planned. What he did not plan, what no part of his sharp, calculating, $42 million mind had prepared him for, was what she did instead. Stay with me. Because what happened on that porch will change the way you think about love, loyalty, and what a person's character truly looks like when no one is watching. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness and unseen connections that change lives, help motivate us to post more by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you are watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful true stories alive. Fred Morgan was 9 years old the first time he wore shoes with a hole in the sole. He remembered it clearly, the way the winter sidewalk of Larkin Street bit through that hole and pressed cold against his sock, then his skin, then something deeper. Something he couldn't name then but understood perfectly now: shame. The quiet, suffocating kind that lives in the chest of a boy who watches his mother count coins on the kitchen counter just to buy a loaf of bread. They lived at 14 Larkin Street, in a gray-sided 2-room house that leaned slightly to the left, as if the weight of everything inside it had become too much to carry straight. The paint peeled in long, curling strips. The porch step was cracked down the middle and had been cracked for as long as Fred could remember. The neighbor's dog barked every night at 11, and the heating unit rattled like it was arguing with itself. His mother, Ruth Morgan, worked 2 jobs, mornings at a laundromat and evenings at a diner where she smelled like coffee and grease when she came home. His father had left when Fred was 4. There was a photograph of him on the mantel for a while, then one day Fred noticed it was gone and Ruth never mentioned it again. What they had instead of money was each other and Ruth's unwavering belief that Fred was destined for something enormous. The size of your beginning, she used to say, pressing a hand against his chest, has nothing to do with the size of your ending. Fred held onto those words like a life raft. He studied by the light of a second-hand lamp. He read books borrowed from the library and returned them on time because he couldn't afford the fines. He got a scholarship to Westfield University at 17, majored in finance, graduated top of his class, and spent the next 15 years turning nothing into something and then something into everything. By 38, Fred Morgan was worth $42 million. He had a penthouse in the city, a car that cost more than 14 Larkin Street ever would, and a name that people mentioned at dinner tables with a kind of reverence usually reserved for people twice his age. He sat on 2 boards, had been featured in 3 magazines, and had quietly paid off his mother's debts, bought her a house in a warm, safe neighborhood, and made sure she never counted coins again. He had everything. Except, for a long time, someone to share it with. He met Naya Paige at a charity gala in October. She was standing near the far window, holding a glass of sparkling water, not champagne. He noticed looking out at the city skyline with an expression that suggested she found the whole event slightly absurd but was too polite to say so. She was wearing a simple navy dress while every other woman in the room sparkled with borrowed diamonds, and she looked more elegant than all of them put together. He walked over. He didn't plan to. His feet simply went. "You look like someone who'd rather be somewhere else," he said. She turned and looked at him with dark, calm eyes. "I'd rather be at a bookstore," she said simply. "But this raises money for the children's hospital, so here I am." He was quiet for a second. Then he laughed, a real laugh, unpolished, the kind he didn't often let out in rooms like that. Her name was Naya Paige. She was a pediatric nurse. She had grown up comfortably, not rich, not poor, in a mid-sized town 3 hours from the city. She drove a used Honda, volunteered on weekends at a community center, and had never Googled him before their first date because, As she explained later with no apology in her voice, I like to find out who people are by talking to them. Fred, who was used to women who had researched him thoroughly before the appetizers arrived, found this almost unbearable in its charm. They dated for 7 months. 7 months of dinners and walks and long phone calls that lasted past midnight. She met his mother and sat with her for 2 hours looking at old photographs. She brought him soup when he was sick. She told him when he was wrong about things, which was more often than he liked to admit. He was in love. Completely, terrifyingly in love. And that was exactly the problem. Fred Morgan had a rule, born not from arrogance but from experience. He had been burned before. Twice, badly. A woman who wept when she met him but checked his net worth before she knew his middle name. Another who spoke of love but flinched the moment the money slowed during. A bad quarter, who talked about their future but meant his portfolio. He had learned the hard way that wealth changed how people saw you. Sometimes it obscured you entirely, until you weren't a man anymore, just a number with legs. Naya seemed different. It was different, he believed. But belief, he knew, was not the same as certainty. And certainty, that was what he needed before he did what he was planning to do. Before he put the ring in the drawer of his bedside table into the light of the world. He needed to see who she was when the world looked hard and cold. He needed to take her back to 14 Larkin Street. He told her they were taking a drive on a Sunday afternoon. He said there was somewhere meaningful he wanted to show her. He did not tell her more than that. She wore jeans and a yellow sweater and asked no questions, just got into the car with a travel mug of tea and the radio playing something soft. As the city gave way to older streets, Naya watched the neighborhoods change through the window, the storefronts growing tired, the sidewalks cracking, the houses shrinking and leaning closer to one another, as if for warmth. Fred watched her from the corner of his eye, his hand steady on the wheel but his chest tight. When he turned onto Larkin Street, he felt something move through him he hadn't expected, not just anxiety, but grief. A strange, dusty grief. The street was exactly as it had been and entirely different, the way all childhood places are when you return to them grown. He parked in front of number 14. It was still gray. Still learning. The porch step was still cracked. A plastic bag caught in the chain-link fence rustled in the wind. "This is where I grew up," he said quietly. Naya looked at the house for a long moment. Then she turned and looked at him. Not at the house. At him. "Tell me about it," she said. He talked. For 20 minutes, he sat in that parked car and told her things he had never said aloud to anyone except his mother, about the hole in the shoe, about counting coins, about the photograph that disappeared from the mantel, about studying by lamplight, about the specific sound the heating unit made, about Ruth pressing her hand to his chest and saying the size of your beginning has nothing to do with the size of your ending. Naya listened. She did not check her phone. She did not arrange her expression into something sympathetic and rehearsed. She simply listened, the way very few people in his life ever, with her whole self turned toward him. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she opened the car door and got out. Fred watched her walk up to the house. He scrambled out after her, confused, his heart hammering. "Naya, what are you?" She wasn't walking away. She was walking toward it. She stood at the bottom of the cracked porch step and looked at it carefully. Then she stepped over it, instinctively protecting herself from the break, and knocked softly on the door. An elderly man answered, squinting in the afternoon light. "I'm so sorry to bother you," Naya said, her voice warm and unhurried. "My friend grew up in this house a long time ago. We were just wondering if we might step inside for a moment. Just briefly. It would mean the world to him." The old man looked past her at Fred, who had gone very still. Something in the old man's face shifted. He nodded, opened the door wider, and stepped aside. They went in. The rooms were smaller than Fred remembered and larger than he expected, the way memory works on the places that shaped us. The walls were a different color now, the furniture foreign, but the bones of it were all the same. The window where the lamp used to sit. The corner where his mother kept her shoes. The kitchen doorway where she would stand in the mornings, stirring something, humming. Fred stood in the middle of that room and felt something crack open in him, not painfully, but the way a window cracks open to let in air. And then Naya did something that shattered him. She turned to the old man, this stranger in Fred's childhood home, and quietly asked, "Do you need anything? Is there anything that needs fixing around the house?" The old man blinked. "The heating unit's been making a noise." Naya took out her phone, looked up a local repair service, called them on the spot, and arranged using her own card, before Fred could say a word for someone to come out the next day. She hung up, smiled at the old man, and said, "You shouldn't have to wait in the cold." She hadn't done it for Fred. She hadn't looked at him while she did it. It wasn't a performance. She had seen an old man in a drafty house and she had simply, quietly, fixed it. They sat in the car for a while before Fred started the engine. He was looking straight ahead. His jaw was tight. His eyes were bright in a way he would not have called crying but would not have called anything else either. "You knew that was a test," he said finally. "It wasn't a question." Naya considered this. "I thought it might be," she said honestly. "But it didn't matter." "Why not?" She turned and looked at him. "Because I wasn't doing any of it for you to see, Fred. I was doing it because it was the right thing to do." She paused. "And also because it's clear that house matters to you. And you matter to me. So it matters to me too." He turned and looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat pocket, not the bedside drawer, not later, not with a plan, and placed the ring box on the center console between them. "I've been carrying this for 3 weeks," he said. "Waiting until I was sure." Naya looked at the box. Then at him. Her eyes were steady and bright. "And?" she said softly. "And I'm sure," he said. "I'm not sure I deserve you. But I'm sure." She picked up the box, opened it, and looked at the ring for exactly 2 seconds before she closed it again and set it down. "Ask me properly," she said. "Outside. By the cracked step." He laughed, that same real, unpolished laugh from the gala, and got out of the car. He asked her properly, on one knee, on the cracked porch of 14 Larkin Street, the house that had made him. The wind moved the plastic bag in the fence. The street was quiet. She said yes before he finished the sentence. They had the heating unit fixed in the old man's house the next morning. They fixed the porch step too, and repainted the siding quietly, without announcement, 6 months later, as a wedding gift to no one in particular. Just because it was the right thing to do. Ruth Morgan cried when she heard the story. "The size of your beginning," she told them both, "has nothing to do with the size of your ending." Naya squeezed the old woman's hand and said, "I know. He told me."